Welcome and good evening all. Tonight we have 3 creepy dark web scary stories for you. As useful and harmless as many of these sites on the deep web are, it's not something you should tread into half-heartedly. Things can turn bad very quickly, as you're all about to find out. So without further ado, let's begin. 9:45 PM. I'd never been inside of one before. An awkward, out-of-place feeling little room nuzzled between a failing Irish pub and an antique shop. I'd honestly forgotten these things existed in the vast metro area of my city. Until I needed one. College essay, see, and I hadn't even begun. Just my luck for my laptop to obnoxiously die the weekend before the paper was due. I tried to borrow a friend's computer, but no dice. As for plan B, my school's library was out of rental laptops. To the local seedy internet cafe I went then, where I'd always been told the poverty-stricken perverts surfed for porn and the seemingly parentless children crowded around online games. The place smelled like a Chuck E. Cheese. It was already dark, and I was just going to take the subway back when I put some decent work in, but the ugly pang of hesitation sunk into my stomach. Looking into the depressing place. God, did I not want to sit here and do work on a Friday night. Not only was it dingy and torn right out of 2005, but it was in a part of a town I did not want to be in at this hour, and since it was open until midnight, I really had no excuse to leave early. I wasn't about to risk failing another class, even for the sole reason that my mum would have ripped into me again. I groaned and I stepped through the threshold. At least it was empty. Well, almost empty. Some plain-looking guy was sat at a computer in the leftmost row, but he looked so absorbed with his screen he didn't even notice me walk in. I took a seat at the very back, slung my backpack off, whipped out an external hard drive and set to work. 11:20 PM. Looking up and down the screen in front of me, I noticed how far I'd managed to come. I had been typing feverishly and cautiously, in a sort of trance with zero regard to my surroundings, and the words filled the page. I had written no Pulitzer, but before me were 2 full paragraphs and a poor excuse for an outline for the latter 3. It was something, and the more I finished tonight, the less time I had to spend in this fucking place tomorrow or even Sunday. I lay back in my chair and gazed absently at the ceiling. My chair was squeaky, punctuating the silence in an ugly way. The light above my head was dim, in fact, all the ceiling lights seemed to burn pretty low. I would have been creeped out if I were a more easily spooked person, but I'm not. I'm relatively built, I'm a skeptic, and I don't have that vivid of an imagination in the first place. So instead, I was just bored. My urge to procrastinate got the best of me, and soon I found myself wandering up and down the dozen or so aisles of outdated white computers that I'm honestly surprised didn't still run Windows 95, just XP instead. There was nobody around. Not even that guy who was here an hour ago. I noticed his empty seat before I picked up the lack of typing and clicking. After a couple of laps around the cafe, I decided to glance down the aisle the man had been in. I noticed a faint glow against the wall that comprised the space behind that row of computers, and I'm a curious person on the border of nosy. I didn't expect to find anything except the Windows startup screen of a monitor, yet to go to sleep. But I turned a corner and you can imagine my surprise when I found a laptop there. A new one. A really nice HP Spectre in great condition. And my first thought was, why would a guy with such a good computer need to go to an internet cafe? At closer glance I could tell the laptop was actually thicker than normal, as if encapsulated in some sort of casing. The screen was open to its desktop, with a solid grey background that gave nothing away, and about 20 different folders and icons scattered about. I didn't recognise any of them aside from the basic file. No Internet Explorer, no Chrome, not even Adobe Reader, just a bunch of weird symbols, some with non-English lettering. I really wish I knew more about software. 2 tabs were minimised on the bottom of the screen, a simple text box and another that just had a square with perforated outline. I hesitated. Standing back up, I looked over to my side of the cafe. There was my bright screen open to the blinding white of a Word document. My backpack beside the chair, my water bottle, my phone. It would have been so easy to leave this stranger's private computer where it was and ignore my pestering curiosity and propensity for poor decision making. Glancing back at the foreign desktop before me, I stood for a moment, weighing the consequences. After a pause, I muttered to myself, "Not worth it." I walked away and a woman spoke. "Hello, did you say something?" Freezing in place, for an instant I thought I must have imagined the sound, but barely a few seconds later, the same shrill, small cannon sound voice called out. "Please talk to me," she cried out very clearly, and I realised the woman sounded terribly afraid. I tilted the stranger's laptop screen a little straighter and looked at the minimised tabs. The text box I left alone. The mysterious one I opened. It was using some browser I didn't recognise called Tor, and yet for some reason it seemed familiar. Several tabs were open on it, and I clicked through them systematically. One held a mysterious string of hyperlinks set against a blank background. Another one was in what I think was acrylic and had random images of people's faces. A third was just lists of unfamiliar names organised into 3 lengthy columns. With a shock I opened the last tab to what disturbed me the most. What filled the screen before me was a very dark, fuzzy image of a tiny enclosure, windowless, and bare of a carpet or furniture. A frail young woman was sitting in a heap in the centre of the room with crude-looking chains, roping her hard to the ground. And then the woman moved. Her head swung wildly around, her matted hair sweeping the shoulders. She was pale, weak-looking and very obviously frightened, but otherwise appeared unharmed. She moved like an abused animal backed into a corner, and I spoke back to her without really thinking. "Hi, who are you?" The woman snapped her head to the camera, which must have been the location of my voice. In a panic I looked for a webcam on the laptop, which I saw had been taped over with black adhesive. After staring at the camera for a while, me gazing on in a confused stupor, she began to sob uncontrollably. She begged me desperately to help her, to let her out, to call the police, in one thin stream of rambling messiness. I tried to form the coherent reply amidst her cries, but I honestly was too shocked to say anything. Before I could, a large man in dark clothing swiftly entered the woman's enclosure and without hesitation began savagely beating her with his fists and feet. I slammed the laptop shut. Adrenaline was coursing through me. Cursing myself, I carried it over to the backpack, stuffed it inside, saved my essay to my USB and left the cafe. 11:55 PM. I don't really know why I took it with me. I have always been impulsive. Maybe that inner desire to investigate took hold of my senses. Maybe instead it was just an instinct to help somebody in need. Sitting in the soft light of a coffee shop deeper in the city, the computer perched menacingly on the little table in front of me. I thought about what I was going to do when I opened it up. I glanced to my right and looked at my phone, the emergency number already typed. I was terrified and yet excited in some twisted way, an excitement which blinded my common sense, despite feeling very out of place in the midst of something that seemed much more intimidating than I was. I decided at last to open it again. Really, I expected a password screen and a dead end, maybe hoping for it too. But the black desktop encouraged me to simply press enter, which I did. And there was the woman. She was splayed awkwardly across the floor, breathing deeply, and every inhale seemed to hurt. Given the mediocre streaming quality, I couldn't make out individual injuries, but she clearly appeared worse than where I'd first seen her. With a sick feeling, I realised her left elbow and wrist were bent in an extremely unnatural way. I plugged my headphones into the jack and spoke to her, getting right to business. "What happened to you, and where are you? I'm in the south part of the city. I'm Alex, and I'm just a college kid." I noticed how shaky my voice sounded just then. "What should I do?" She jerked her head towards me, but didn't say anything for a moment. "Call the police," she whimpered in a low voice. Glancing around herself, the woman looked more helpless than ever now. "I don't know where I am." Without breaking eye contact with the screen, I reached for my phone and dialed the number. My heart was pounding again. The call rang for a while, and I had completely blocked out my surroundings. My thoughts were racing and I tried to piece together what I was going to say. but I found it hard to concentrate. The image of the woman being beaten burned into my mind's eye. I had no idea what the hell I had gotten myself into, and I began to think about tossing the laptop and jumping ship. But then something strange happened. A voice answered the other end, but it didn't ask me what the emergency was. Instead, it spoke in a very AI-sounding tone, a simple hello. In a hurry, I began to rattle off what I had encountered, but quickly was interrupted by the same hello in the same monotone, robotic voice. I paused and waited. Hello, Alex. The text, Alex. A numbing dread creeped into my stomach. I pulled the phone from my face. The number did not read 911, but some random string of digits with an unfamiliar area code. I hung up in horror. Deliberately typing out 911 this time, I pressed call, but found as the dial began to play, that the same strange phone number blared across the screen. My phone dropped into my lap and I yelled. The lone barista and the only other occupant of the shop looked curiously in my direction, and then I remembered the downsized text box on the laptop. Slowly, deliberately, I moved the cursor to the icon. I hate to admit how afraid I was by this point, but my fingers were literally trembling against the trackpad. I clicked. It was just an address. Nothing more, nothing less. As I stared at the words and numbers before me, the woman began to wail quietly into my earbuds, questioning my sudden silence, begging me to help her, painful sounding sobs choking her words. They know who I am, I kept thinking to myself, ignoring the girl. How do they know who I am? I desperately racked my brain for how my phone could have been manipulated and my identity revealed. If this was the dark parts of the internet I had heard about, and it really seemed like it, I was probably dealing with very serious computer hackers. I'd never felt so vulnerable. It was all too much, this discovery so much bigger than myself, and I was way over my head. So I picked up my stuff in a panic and ran, leaving the laptop. Before I exited the shop, however, I did go up to the barista and ask him to use his phone, or any phone. The large man smiled blankly at me, even looked a little sad and told me, no phones. And rushing out the door without questioning him, I only later realised that the man had not been behind the counter just moments before I approached him, that the barista who turned towards my yell had been somebody entirely different, and that the one who had denied me my phone call seemed far too old, too foreign, and too out of place to work at the coffee shop. I was in such a frenzy I didn't even register to me that he had no uniform. 1:37 AM. Fuck. The laptop was sitting in front of me. I can't believe I didn't notice the guy place it. I took a long and unusual route to a more distant station because I was afraid of being followed. I put my phone away after every text and call I tried to make to my parents wouldn't go through, and I watched my back carefully while I was on the move. But as I sat nervously on the subway, which now was completely and suspiciously devoid of people, the drunk man had slipped right in front of me without me noticing. It must have been him, the typical loony subway lurker, dressed like a homeless hippie from the 60s and rambling incoherently into his brown paper bag, was the only other person in the car with me, and he had just gotten off, and the laptop had just appeared in the seat in front of me. Fuck. Adrenaline was coursing through me again, and I angrily flipped it open. There wasn't even Wi-Fi on the subway, but the stream was still steady, and the woman, having been without my company for a while now, looked much, much worse. Some of her hair looked like it had been torn out in chunks. Clusters of it littered the ground around her. Unmistakable blood dripped in thin streams down her face and torso, and her spaghetti-strapped top was stained dark. Both of her feet were missing. It wasn't an illusion. They had clearly been removed directly above the ankle. It took me a moment to notice that the pale extremities had been carelessly thrown to the ground behind her broken body. I gasped and found myself crying silently, feeling more helpless and torn than ever before. She heard me. Weakly, she tried to lift herself to her one working limb, squirming in pain, managing to ask again for my help. Nobody has ever sounded so pitiful. I'm going to try, I lied to her in a trembling voice, wishing I hadn't opened the laptop, before I shut the screen again. However, I pulled the text box back open. Perhaps morbid curiosity got the best of me. It always does. And to my horror, despite my unwillingness to accept it could be, the text had changed. Beneath the address is now read, "You are stuck, Alex," and then the subway train screeched to a stop. I knew immediately something wasn't right. The emptiness of my car had begun to frighten me immensely, and we were definitely not at my station. Too much time passed before the train doors opened, and I cautiously stepped out of them, leaving the computer in my seat, with the girl's growing wails echoing around the room. I did not know where I was. It seemed like a typical downtown subway station, but at the same time there was no signs to indicate where I was, and even the maps of the system had been removed from the underground walls. It was half as lit as it should have been, making this nightmare almost comically dark. The whole place felt abandoned. Glancing around, I tried to think about how long I had been travelling, how far I might have come, but I couldn't for the life of me remember. I cursed loudly at myself and tried not to panic, despite feeling very alone and out of my element, which had been the case since quitting on my stupid fucking essay. The subway train hadn't left yet, the doors were still agape, and silence tilled the air save for low cries from the computer. I decided to just ascend the steps and take it from there. I was bound to recognise something. But I didn't. In fact, standing on the empty corner of a city street I had never heard of before, I realised I was in a part of town that seemed completely devoid of all life. The buildings around me were vacant and littered with broken windows, and all the nearest entryways were boarded up. I started walking towards the nearest street lamp, taking an industrial feel to the area, and noting how little sound I could hear. Adrenaline still pumping, I felt as though an attack could happen at any moment. With a jolt, I stopped and stared at the aging warehouse across the street. The address painted across in metal doors was identical to the one of the laptop. At least I thought it was, but I had no way to check without the computer itself. I wasn't about to make sure, but in this moment I felt very toyed with, the gravity of how out of control this situation had gotten truly registering in my mind. I was rooted to the spot, maybe 100 yards from the subway station, staring into the warehouse and wondering hopelessly what was inside, and knowing I wouldn't dare to approach it. At the same time, some noise was barely audible in the wind around me, something deeply unsettling. My attention refocused. I strained my ears to pick it up. A few steps closer to the street and it hit me, screaming. The girl screaming, not from any device, in front of me, in the building. I ran. Guilty as I may feel for the rest of my life, I bolted like my life depended on it. To be honest, it probably did. I'm typing this all away now. I have no idea how far I've come. The only people I've encountered outside have paid no mind to me, but a couple times I'm certain somebody was watching me from down the street. I only stole glances before continuing to run. I just want to get home and put everything behind me. I'm never going to mess with other people's shit again. I'm going to call my mum and tell her I want to come home for a little while, and then I'm going to ace my classes and move on. I'm also planning on completely discarding my devices and getting a new phone and computer. Gotta hope this doesn't follow me. The street I'm approaching seems familiar. I might be able to make it back soon. 4:05 AM. I'm so stupid. I'm so naive, so impulsive, and so stupid. I took forever, but I finally made it back to civilization into my apartment building. I told the guy at the front to call the police, but when he asked me why, I blanked. There was nothing about my story that sounded believable, and what's more, I was afraid to be tied to the event in any way. I had nothing to give the cops anyway, aside from some vague details about a laptop and an address I'd already forgotten. So I hurried up to my room, while the man at the front watched me expressionlessly, and now I am sitting in my bedroom and that laptop is right beside me. Nothing seemed out of place. My front door opened fine and still locked. No windows or lights had been tampered with, and yet placed delicately on top of my pillow, screen open, was a goddamn fucking computer. I couldn't believe it. Hell, I desperately didn't want to. But yet there it was, undeniably. My body was instantly wrought with mind-bending horror as reality sunk in and survival mode overtook me. The woman was moaning non-stop now. Her eyes had been brutally gouged out, and I had vomited in fear and shock at the sight of her in my own home. I didn't open the text box, but I'm sure there was more to read. I'm typing this out because my texts won't deliver to anybody, my calls won't go through even to the police. and my one outdated landline is doing nothing but beeping dial tones. I'm typing because I'm terrified for my life and I think I'm trapped here. I don't know what will happen next, but I know it can't be good. Just now I heard something heavy drag across my living room, and there's definitely something outside this door. I tried screaming for help out of the window, but I'm so high up and none of my neighbours have done anything if they can hear me at all. I hate myself. I hate how compulsive and nosy I am. I hate that I had to be so bad at college and so unlucky that I ended up in this whole mess in the first place. I hate how fucked I am. The last thing the woman said to me before I tore the laptop battery out was a choked warning, something that chilled me to my very core. They like to play games, she had sobbed to me, before the large man returned abruptly and began to work on her mouth with a pair of scissors. The computer hasn't done anything since then. I was sure to smash a screen with the bottom of the lamp. Somebody is turning the doorknob to my room now. The tiny lock in it isn't going to be enough, and if they want me this badly, the dresser in front of me won't do much either. I think my life might be in danger. Number 2. My local internet cafe is not much of a sight to behold. I think that's what may have contributed to it shutting down for a couple of months back in June. The exterior was reminiscent of an abandoned shack with its dilapidated appearance and broken windows. However, after they cleaned up the inside, I definitely saw some improvement. Sparkly clean tile floors and beautiful mahogany countertop filled the cafe with a sense of ease and elegance. I always got plenty of work done in there, so the shop's grungy look never bothered me much, but it was nice to have a change of scenery once the cleanup was done. I was probably the only regular at the cafe, venturing in on almost a daily basis. Plenty of other folks cycled in and out, but nary a familiar face would show up. This was mine, since I only went there to edit my vlogs and website on occasion. Striking up a conversation with someone recognisable was not on the agenda, ever. I was there for some much needed peace and quiet, not small talk. Though I had Wi-Fi at home, the thin walls there did little to muffle my father's drunken ramblings. The cafe was my escape from the unwanted noise. I strolled in on a Saturday morning, just 5 days after the grand reopening. I was feeling pretty groggy, still recovering from a cold I caught during the week. The humid August air didn't help matters. Because of this, I decided to grab a coffee before getting my things set up. I walked across the glimmering newly replaced floors and heard them squeak under my sneakers. I laughed a little to myself, almost tempted to start turning in place just to hear the sound a few more times. No, I told myself, grow up. I ordered my coffee and took a look around the room while I was waiting for it. I took a mental note of how many faces were in the cafe with me. I was surely going to grab a quiet little table in the corner away from these strangers. Small iced regular, the barista held out my coffee and straw. Thanks, I said plainly. I threw down a couple of quarters as a tip and strolled on over to the table I wanted. I spent the next few hours clipping and splicing my videos from the days previous. I was doing a week-long series about the gym I go to. Basically workout tips and some comedy bits with my buddy Jake, who works the front desk. I found myself laughing out loud over a protein shake skit we had done. I may have drawn some attention to my little corner of the room. Though the staring eventually subsided, I felt it best for me to leave, as I had been in there much longer than usual. I reached down and unplugged my laptop charger, and that's when my hand brushed up against something. Confused, I took a look under my table to investigate. A 16-inch black bag sat just beyond where my feet were settled. It had pockets and a shoulder strap, as well as an abundance of dust coating the leather. Holy crap, I thought to myself. Someone must have left their laptop behind or something. At first I was going to do the right thing. I very easily could have handed it to the barista and called it a day. I guess maybe that would have been the smart thing to do. However, a mixture of curiosity and stupidity came over me, keeping me from being honest. Instead, after packing up my own things, I swung the mystery bag over my shoulder and swiftly exited the cafe. Stupid. I pulled into my driveway about noon, the hot summer sun beaming down on my front lawn. My father was doing his usual half-assed inspection of the plants in the garden, beer can in hand. I tried to get into the house without a word to him, but he stopped me just as I opened the storm door. Hey, what are you in such a hurry? He asked, taking a swig of his drink. Dad, I don't have time. Important website business. Well, he slurred. Don't stop on my account. But you just stopped me, I thought to myself. I pushed through the front door, passing my sleeping mother on the couch, and darted upstairs to my room. Slam! I shut the door hard behind me and locked it immediately. I tossed my belongings and newly found goods onto my bed and kicked my shoes clear across the room. I was excited to dig into this lucky haul. Carefully and slowly, I unzipped the top of the bag and pulled it open. I gasped a little to myself. Despite the appearance of the bag, the contents were no joke. A shiny brand new looking laptop was nestled nicely inside. I pulled it out and observed it with awe. It was certainly nicer than my basic 500 gig HP from a box store. I couldn't believe what I was holding. I flipped it open and began feeling the keys and monitor. It was in mint condition. I had to be the luckiest guy in the world. Everything was there, including a charger and wireless mouse. I even found a bag of screen wipes at the bottom. I also dug into the pockets, curious as to what treasure I might find in there. What I found was a cell phone, nothing special, just some cheap Android phone. It was still powered on and had no screen lock in it. Exploring it further, I noticed there were no texts and only one recent call to an outside state number. Being into electronics, I went into the settings to see what kind of operating system it had. It was vastly out of date on software, still set in some variation of the Lollipop OS. That's alright, I thought. I could still flip it for a quick $10 or so. I placed it on the bed next to the laptop and sat for a moment, trying to take in what I had in front of me. This was such a great find. I needed to power on the laptop and figure out what I was working with. To my excitement, there was no login screen. I was in, immediately after booting it up. I was never as into laptops as iPhones, but I could tell right away I was not working with your standard stock operating system. This thing resembled more of a modded setup than I had seen kids working with back in high school, but I couldn't name it off the top of my head. Luckily, it was simple enough to navigate. I set it up with my Wi-Fi and dived right into the file storage to get some idea of whose computer I had. I was disappointed for just a few moments, but after clicking around a bit, I did find a folder labelled A. Inside was one JPEG titled 1 by 1. Intrigued, my stomach did a little flip as I opened the image. I was puzzled by what I found. It was a screenshot from a website. It looked like a post in some forum from a user named Ananadon and 4, which nothing but phone numbers listed and 0 replies. Underneath the list was this tagline: "You know who you are." Scanning the image for answers, I noticed the address bar for the site. It seemed to be a nonsense string of characters followed by a a.onion extension. Onion? What's that, a parody news site or something? I wasn't too sure, but I decided to dig a little deeper. I clicked on the X at the top, taking me back to the desktop. That's when I noticed another folder. This one was labelled Pics, which stirred up some more thrills in my bones. Yes, I cheered to myself. This would more than likely reveal the owner's identity. I became disappointed as I clicked through the pictures. There was no human life, just shots of different places and scenery. This included a dark image of a barber's shop, a path in the woods somewhere, and even someone's garage. What really caught my eye was the last pic. It was the cafe. My stomach started doing acrobatics now, my heart racing. Why were there random pictures in this thing? Why was there a screenshot of a message board with a list of phone numbers? The files just weren't adding up for me, but I hatched a half-baked plan. I didn't know if it was going to end the mystery, but I couldn't help but pry. I pulled up the pic with the phone numbers, grabbed the Android phone and dialed the first number at the top of the list. After only 2 rings, I was greeted with silence. Strange, I thought. But I pressed on. I dialed the next number on the list. This time, it rang 5 times before I got a generic inbox greeting, with the phone number listed. Interesting, but I hung up before I heard the beep. I grew bored of dialing the random numbers. I decided to take a break and put the laptop and cell phone away for a little while. I knew I'd come back to it later. Once the evening rolled around, I waited for my parents to go to bed and then fixed myself up a snack. This was pretty much a nightly routine of mine. I clicked on the TV as I usually did and settled on the first news channel I scrolled to. This is when things took a turn for the weird. A breaking news story was displayed on screen, one from the next town over. Young barber aged 25 found murdered at work. Damn, I shook my head. That sucks. A female news reporter was on scene outside of the barber shop where it took place. Wait a second. I couldn't believe my eyes. That barber shop. It was the same one from the pic on the laptop. I was sure of it. I put my plate down on the coffee table and raced upstairs to grab the computer. I booted it up, clicked on a folder of pictures and then the photo in question. I ran back downstairs with the laptop in hand and held it up to the TV screen. Yeah, it was definitely the same barber shop. Well, what are the chances of that? I was shaking my head in amazement. I finished watching the news story and began feeling tired. I was about ready for bed, so I grabbed the remote. The news story just after grabbed my attention before I could hit the power button. Cold murder in local forest. This one was also nearby, just over the bridge in the opposite direction. This world is terrible, I thought. I hadn't seen two stories like that back to back in a long time. That's when it hit me. I scrolled over to the picture of the woods in the same folder. Then I waited to see if the news story included the location of the homicide on the video. Though I didn't get anything solid to compare it to, I was definitely getting weird vibes. First a barber shop and now a forest. I had to be grasping at straws though, right? I had decided it was bedtime. I had a pretty restless night of sleep, tossing and turning and kicking my covers to the foot of my bed. It was hot and humid, and I kept waking up with the sweats. Needless to say, I was in a dire need of a coffee the next morning. I was probably smart to leave the strange laptop at home, grabbing my own equipment as I headed out the door. I drove rather quickly to the cafe, eyelids still heavy. I got my regular coffee and sat down at my favourite booth in the corner. Only one other person resided in the building, apart from the baristas at work. It was nice and quiet, and felt peaceful. A good contrast for my evening snack and sweaty night of interrupted rest. Still, my mind couldn't help but wander. The web address, from the screenshots I found, came rolling into the forefront of my thoughts. What was that onion domain all about? Why did the web address make no sense? It was something like code in flux, with random numbers and symbols after it. This was meaningless to me. I decided to do some research. I couldn't recall the exact website, but I remembered the .onion extension, so I started from there. I was immediately blown away. Apparently, what it pertains to is web addresses not reachable on normal servers. It takes you through something called Tor, and it's used for some pretty shady activity. I guess it involves what's called the dark web. I'd heard a little about this before. I was beginning to feel sick. The website listed on the wiki were pretty revolting to say the least. Nothing I would ever want to be involved in. The worst part? I was beginning to think the laptop I found was used solely to access this part of the internet. I couldn't bear the thought of being in possession of it any longer. I had to do something. I stormed out of the cafe ready to spring into action when I was stopped by a tap on my leg. I looked down to see a homeless looking man in a black tattered leather jacket sitting up against the front of the building. His face looked rough, complete with baldy shaven beard and cracked lips. He looked miserable. He held out a small plastic cup, looking up at me with desperation in his eyes. "Spare change, sir?" "I am in a hurry, dude, and I don't carry cash." "Please," he begged some more. He reached out and grabbed my pants leg. "No, get away from me." I kicked his hand away. The guy looked upset. His eyes were actually watering a little bit. I felt a little bad, but damn, don't grab me. That's when the guy did the strangest thing. He took out a phone and started taking pictures of me. "What are you doing now?" I asked, confused as hell. He didn't answer. All I could do about it was run to my car and leave as fast as possible. What was that guy's deal? I called my friend Peter on my way home. I knew he would have some more insight into the whole thing. I was hoping I could bring him to my house and have him wipe the computer clean. Then I could sell it to a random Yahoo and be done with this whole misadventure. Once I picked up my friend, I sped back to my house and showed him what I found in the cafe. He was blown away. "This thing is lethal," he laughed. "It looks pretty customised, honestly." "Yeah, I noticed that, but take a look at these." I clicked through the photos showing him the ones that I compared with the news stories. "So you think this laptop has some sort of connection to the murders?" "I don't know, man, but I think there's something fishy going on." He shrugged and took over the mouse for a moment. "Where's the pictures of the phone numbers?" "It's somewhere in file storage." Yep, click there and bingo. Peter stared intently at the list and address bar in the screenshot. He also checked the file description and saw the screenshot originated from the laptop. So, it was taken from within the device. My hairs were at attention, all up and down my skin. So, you tested the numbers out? Yeah, with this phone. I handed him the cell phone that came in the bag with the laptop and he scanned through it rapidly. Definitely a track phone. Something bought as a burner, possibly for some sort of business task. Shall we try another phone number? I nodded and pointed to one just below the phone numbers I tested out. He dialed it and threw it on speakerphone so we could both listen. It rang and rang and rang. It didn't stop ringing. So we hung up after the 8th ring. Peter looked at the phone funny, and then up at me. I honestly don't know what's up with all this. Do you want me to just factory reset everything? Yeah, I mean, is that going to take care of my problem? Not sure, but I think I'd like to have some fun with this before we call it a day. I gave him a look, a glance of disagreement. I didn't think that would be in our best interest. I don't think we should be messing with this dude. Come on, what could go wrong? We could even film it. This could go viral. Well, I'm not going to vlog me hanging around with a stolen laptop. Just do what you gotta do with it, and let's move on. Peter smirked and looked at the screen again, and then dialed another phone number from the list. Again, we got nothing. This time just another generic voicemail box greeting. He continued on to the next phone number, and halfway through the dialing he stopped. His eyes were scanning the screen. His face was now white as a ghost. Why did you stop? You okay? This is my phone number. My heart panged like a club to a gong. That can't be. I scooted over next to Peter and observed the screen. He was right. Just to be sure, he finished dialing it and hit send. He put the phone up to his ear and waited. Just as he suspected, his pocket lit up and his ringtone sang away. We both looked at each other in shock. Dude, my hands were shaky and my mouth was agape so far. I think my jaw was brushing my bedsheets. How? Is all Peter could muster up from racing thoughts. This is unreal. I don't like this at all. Just wipe the hard drive and let's be done with it. Wait, he shouted, while looking on the screen again. My heart sank some more. I had a feeling about what he was about to say. What? Don't tell me. He didn't say a word. All he did was start frantically dialing another number. That's when I felt it. My pocket was now vibrating. I gulped so loud that I flinched. I reached down and pulled out my phone and answered. I held it up to my ear. Peter, I said through the receiver, looking at my visibly shaken friend across from me. This is messed up, he responded through the burner phone. I ended up driving Peter home shortly after. He had handed the phone over and told me he wanted to leave and take everything in. He left the laptop with me and told me he'd rather not mess with it. We decided to meet up at the cafe and drop it back off right in the morning. We'd wake up early and hopefully be the first ones in. However, I missed my alarm. Apparently I also missed 10 calls from Peter. I opened up my phone and noticed the 4 texts he'd sent. Damn, I have to get going and fast. I'd already packed up everything in the night before, so all I had to do really was throw on a t-shirt and shorts and head to the cafe. As I turned the corner to where the cafe was, I had hit the brakes pretty quickly when I saw on the road was nothing but cops and ambulances. There were roadblocks set up on either side of the ambulances and the cafe was barricaded. What in the... I was thinking out loud. This was crazy. There were people with their hands on their faces, looking scared and sad. I pulled over into the grocery store parking lot across the street and then walked over to the scene to get a closer look. I assumed Peter was doing the same thing. I ended up in a crowd of onlookers next door, looking at the scene before us. There was blood splattered on the front doors of the cafe and some papers, among other belongings, strewn all about. More blood covered the ground. Jesus, this was a damned massacre. I could hear the people beside me whispering to each other about what was going on. They were talking about a possible serial killer. One woman said to her friend, the kid was about to walk in and suddenly bullets came in from over there. Nobody saw who fired the shots. A guy filled his wife in about what he witnessed. I was too curious to just be craning my neck from back there. I needed a closer look. I peered over the cops who were busy questioning a barista who by the ambulances. I crept past the barricades carefully. I slipped past another couple of baristas and made my way to a second ambulance by the other barricade. The stretcher was in view now, but I couldn't tell who was in it. I decided to kneel down beside the ambulance and hopefully catch some conversation between the EMTs. I took out my phone and started recording. We lost him. He wasn't hanging in there much when we got here, but I was hoping. Jan, it's not your fault. You saved the girl. You can't save them all, you know. I wish I could. I heard him talk before he let go, you know. He told me his name was Peter. My hand jumped over my mouth as I let out the weirdest sound. It was a gasp combined with a grunt of disbelief. No, I couldn't believe it. Yeah, the other EMT said. We have his information already. Guess he was an IT guy for a local business. Smart kid, early 20s. I stumbled back a bit onto my heels, dropping my phone in the process. I bumped into something solid behind me and stood up quickly. I turned around and saw the same homeless guy from the other day. My face was still contoured from the information I just received from my eavesdropping. The guy was just staring at me, stoic. He didn't even react to me bumping into him. He was glaring at me from behind, an unchanging expression. I couldn't help it. I booked across the street to my car. I could feel tears forming in my ducts, eyes twitching in the wind from my open driver's side window. Why did I have to wake up so late? Maybe Peter would have been spared for whatever this was. A drive-by, an assassination of some kind. My head was dizzy, my heart was hurting. But I was beginning to make some connection. The pictures on the computer, the phone numbers, the murders, everything. I was getting an idea as to what it was I was dealing with. The stuff about the dark web, the strange laptop, and the phone numbers. I arrived home, heartsick as hell. My friend was murdered today, and I couldn't stop it. Maybe if I had never grabbed a computer from the cafe, he'd still be alive. Maybe if I hadn't been so stupid, I could have handled this whole thing differently, and he wouldn't be dead right now. To top it off, I realised I left my phone at the bloody scene. I groaned and threw my head back in the driver's seat. Now what? Well, the phone is near some cops and EMTs. Maybe if I call, they'll believe I dropped it before they got there, and I won't get in trouble. I reached back and grabbed the burner phone out of the bag and started to dial my phone number when I suddenly had a thought. If the phone numbers we dialed somehow had something to do with the murders, that must mean. I grabbed the laptop out of the bag, my heart racing and body profusely sweating in fear. The whole thing was unreal. The fact that I was right in the middle of it was even worse. I clicked on a folder of pictures of scenery from earlier. Again my eyes scrolled across the pictures of the barber shop, then the forest. Finally my eyes got to the picture of the cafe. Yes, the phone numbers in these locations have to somehow be tied together. But I didn't know how. Why was this happening? I was about to leave the folder, but then a small thumbnail at the end of the list pictures caught my eye. I hovered the cursor over it and opened it up. With some cloud service, the image was revealed. My jaw dropped in utter horror. A picture of my house. I was looking at the picture of my front yard and home. I hadn't noticed this before. Why hadn't I noticed this? Over in the top corner was a link. One that opened up the full cloud folder from some email made up from gibberish characters. The folder contained more pics. Pics that were very different from the others. No way, I shouted out loud, face contoured in anger and fear all at once. Pictures of me. Pictures of me, looking directly at the camera. Others of my car. The last ones were of me sneaking into the crime scene at the cafe. That guy. That homeless looking guy from the other day. And behind the ambulance. I have his laptop. He was watching me. How did he tie into these murders? My silent tirade was interrupted by the sudden sound of a jingle to my right. The phone was ringing in the passenger seat. I picked it up and peered at the phone number. I couldn't handle this anymore. I just couldn't take it. It was my own phone number. Grudgingly, I decided to swipe and answer the call. Who is this? I stammered. A gravely voice answered from the other end. Any spare change, sir? Number 3. Just the concept alone was enough to draw me in. An internet underneath the internet. The dark web. That's how my old friend Kel described it to me. It wouldn't be until he gave me a list of links that I would truly understand just why people refer to it as dark. Months before his passing, Kel had progressively gotten darker in nature. empathy seemingly vanishing from him. He would later go on to tell me that it started with his dive into the dark web and stumbling upon a site so dark and twisted that it could make even the most kind-hearted person into a demented parallel of their former self. After almost a week of talking with him about the dark web, Kyle finally agreed to share his secret stash of links with me. He told me never to share even one of the links with anybody. This statement made me uneasy about what I was getting myself into, but my curiosity was clawing at the edge of my brain, ready to jump out of my skull. I had to see the things for myself. To do so, I would need to meet him the next day at the old library in the centre of town. The next day I was exhausted. I'd stayed up into the early hours of the morning, scouring the internet for more information on the dark web. I found videos talking about underground drug trade sites, and people had claimed to have first-hand experiences that scarred them for life. Hearing of these kinds of things might turn away a normal person, but I wasn't one of them. It was almost 9 when I arrived at the library. Kyle and our good friend Justin were waiting for me, sitting on a bench just outside the front doors. Justin smiled, happy to see me, and got up to give me a hug. Kyle remained seated, but also seemed happy that I had arrived. We spent the morning hanging out, grabbing a bite to eat from our local coffee and bagel shop. From there, we made our way to what Kyle referred to us as the Nest. This was a wooden fort we built years ago, located in the woods behind the local supermarket. Upon reaching the Nest, Justin and I noticed that Kyle had done some redecorating of sorts. What had always been just a plain wooden fort was now completely covered by black tarps. He said that he had been spending nights out there and didn't want any homeless people to stumble across the place. Unusual, yes, but it was clear that Kyle was troubled. We didn't want to interfere with his way of coping with whatever it was that was going on. We all sat down on old chairs that I had found in the dump a while back. Kyle reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened his note app and asked if I was sure I wanted the list. I said that I was, and he copied the list, pasted it into a text and sent it to me. He told me not to open it until I was ready to begin my dive into the endless cavern that is the deep web. I agreed, and the text was sent. As if he had forgotten about something important, Kyle abruptly stood up and then left. Justin and I asked where he was heading, but he was sparse in his reply, saying he had some business to take care of. Shrugging it off as another one of Kyle's quirks, Justin and I spent the next few hours just sitting and talking. He told me about how Kyle had helped him find this app to meet people on, and how he had a date with a girl the next town over. I was happy for him. He was a good guy, but never had any luck with women. I asked him if he remembered our awful first kiss back in 2nd grade. He laughed and gave me a love tap on the shoulder. Since then, him and I became good friends. When I got home in the early afternoon, my mum was asleep on the couch. She had worked another double. I grabbed a blanket off the love seat and draped it over her to keep her comfortable. I made my way into the kitchen and grabbed a snack and headed up to my room to begin my journey into the uncharted waters of the dark web. From videos I watched the night before, I learned that I had to download a special web browser. It was one of the few ways to access this part of the internet. As it installed, I opened up Kyle's text and quickly scrolled through the links. He had sent me a good 15 or so to pursue. After the install finished, I opened it up and entered in the first link on the list. I took a moment to load, but I was eventually greeted with a welcome page to an underground video share site. I spent a few minutes scrolling through the videos, looking for a good one to watch. There was one title that caught my eye. It was a video from our local Dark Point burgers. Quickly I clicked and watched. Once loaded, I realised I was watching security footage. Dated just 3 months ago, I saw my friend Katie, who worked overnight there. She was standing in the middle of the frame, slowly backing away from the counter. It was hard to make out exactly what was going on at first, but after a moment, the footage became clear. She had rolled up her sleeves, seemingly freaked out at the appearance of her arms. I noticed movement underneath the back of her shirt, as if a gust of wind had swept through the eatery. Further into the video, she was reaching into the ice cream machine. The footage went fuzzy for a moment, then became clear again, showing Katie bolting out the door. She had gone missing a few months ago, and I wondered if this was the last time she was seen. The whole town thinks she killed her father because he was found dead at their home on the same day she disappeared. Freaked out, I exited the browser and sat silently for a while. After gathering up the courage, I reopened the search engine and typed in the next link on the list. I was directed to a site that contained live feeds from what are known as red rooms. I clicked on the first stream and watched as a hooded figure beat a woman strapped to a chair. I quickly left his sight when the man looked directly into the camera and pulled out a knife from his pocket. I didn't want to see what would happen next. Continuing through the links, I came across more and more disturbing sites. One of a hacked baby monitor, a child trafficking site, and one containing a list of classified federal cases. The first one was titled, Neuer Family, a name I distinctly remembered hearing on the news before. Finally, I entered the last link. My monitor turned pitch black. After a moment, a small flashing line appeared in the middle of the screen. Assuming something was wrong with the link, I attempted to exit the page, but the screen was locked in place. Words then began typing themselves out in front of my eyes. Hello Jamie, we are the silence, we are the solitude, we few are many, and soon you might finally wake up. Who was doing this? How did they know my name? 2 buttons appeared on screen under text. The one on the left read join, and the one on the right read exit. Officially freaked, I darted my cursor to the exit button. I was met with a small pop-up message informing me that exiting was not allowed. Random images appeared, too fast for me to focus on any single one. When it stopped, I was shown a live feed of myself. My webcam had been turned on. In horror, I tried to turn off my computer, but to no avail. It remained on no matter what I did. A demented lullaby then played through my speakers. I sat there for a moment just listening to it, confused and anxious as to what was going on. At the end of the tune was a loud scream. Startled, I got up to run from the room. I heard what sounded like the front door of my house being kicked in. I screamed for my mum as I ran out. I heard her scream along with the sound of a man telling her to shut up. When I finally reached the base of the stairs, she was being dragged out of the house. Another man stood just staring at me, frozen at the bottom of the staircase. Who are you? What do you want? Who are you taking my mum? I shouted, dashing at the hooded man in front of me. I was met with his fist. I hit the floor hard and passed out. When I came to, I was in what looked like to be an abandoned warehouse. My hands were bound behind my back. I struggled, trying to get myself free but couldn't. I looked around and found my mother tied up just a short distance away. I shouted to her, desperately trying to wake her, but she remained unconscious. My ears rang as if someone had clapped their hands right next to my head. With tunnel vision, I tried to scream, but couldn't even feel my vocal cords vibrating to make a sound. When my vision returned, a creature whose appearance I cannot for the life of me remember was floating above the ground just a few feet in front of me. Though its appearance escapes me, I do recall it staring at me, its eyes a bright fiery orange. It held its hand to me, and I began to float too. My bonds became loose as I hovered towards the creature. It wrapped its hand around my face, and the feeling was indescribable. Through its fingers, I could see a light emanating from within, something leaving my mouth, being absorbed by the beast. When the glow faded, I blacked out. When I came to a second time, I was at home in bed. Frantically, I hopped up and scanned the room. Kyle was sitting on a chair in front of my computer. My mother was knocked out, laying on the floor next to my bed. I was still terribly afraid, but also angry at Kyle for what I had gone through. I shouted, begging him to tell me what the hell was going on. He stood up slowly, walked towards the door of my bedroom, and looked at me. When he spoke, it was with no emotion. We few are many, and soon you might finally wake up. Congratulations, you survived the first trial. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and for additional behind the scenes content, check out my Patreon or channel membership, also for early uploads. Anyway, I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you.